Hi, my name is Ronnie, and I'd like to share a little story with you. So nice, story time with Ronnie. I lived 4 years in Japan, beautiful country, wonderful people, good mountains. And one thing that really shocked me was the job interview process and the amount of information that people were asked and give in job interviews. So for example, in Japan, I remember on resumes, people had to give their picture, their age, maybe the marital status. And I found this to be very strange because in Canada and in North America, this you just don't give your picture, because I'm sure that people will judge you on your appearance in a job interview. Even just looking at your resume, they're like, oh, well, this one's gorgeous, let's hire him. You can't do that. And we have really strict laws about this in North America. So I'm here to walk you through some. You have to be aware that there are many questions that the interviewer cannot ask you based on race, age, gender, appearance. There's also the problem that you have to know enough not to talk about them yourself. So, for example, if you're a new mother, congratulations, you just had a baby, and you're going for a job interview, don't mention the baby, okay? It's not illegal to say that you don't have a baby or say you have a baby, but it's just a very dodgy subject to talk about a job interview. It makes you look very unprofessional. You're there to talk about your job and you getting a new job, not about your newborn baby. So you have to watch out for professionalism. If you get involved in talking about things that are or can be seen as discriminatory, not a good situation. You have to watch out for legal issues, and you have to be aware that the standards in North America might be very different from your country. They could be similar, but they could be very different. So pay attention, make sure you know the game before you run it. Run the race, practice. So, discrimination based upon gender. What do you identify as? They're not allowed to ask your sex. Who do you live with? Again, trying to determine your gender can be caused as discrimination, or can be looked at as discrimination. How are you related to the people you work with? Again, it seems that these questions are leading to what's your gender, which again is discrimination. They cannot discriminate against you based on your male, your female, your choose to identify with whatever you choose. It's just wrong. Also, they cannot discriminate against you based on appearance. As I mentioned to you in Japan, and I know in Korea as well, you put a picture on your resume. And I know people are sitting there going, nah, this one, nah, oh, this one's cute, let's hire her. Whoa, look at this guy's eyes, let's hire him. You cannot do this. Appearance. You're not allowed to talk about how much you weigh, your height, unless it is very, very specific to the job. If you're going for a job for the tallest person in the world, they can ask you your height. But if it's a general question, if you have to meet some height requirement, they can ask you, do you measure up to 6'2"? Or are you taller than 3.5? If it's required for the job. It's very important to stress that. Do you have any disabilities? If this is brought up, again, it can be seen as discrimination. Are you pregnant? Never, ever ask a woman if she's pregnant, okay? I don't care what social situation you're in, but especially in a job interview, again, it can be seen as discrimination. We have age discrimination. So depending on how old or young someone is, they could be denied a job. Again, unless it's a legal requirement. In Canada, if you're under 18 years of age, you cannot work in a bar legally. So they can ask you, Are you of legal age to work in Canada in a bar? Yes, that's perfect. They can't ask you specifically how old you are. When's your birthday? No. What year were you born? What year did you graduate? If they know what year you graduated and they're good in math, they're going to know your age. Maybe they are concerned about someone being too old for a job or too young for a job, which is that way. When did you get your first job? Mathematically, they can figure out how old you are. So these questions, very, very dangerous. Be careful. As far as availability goes, your scheduling. So they're not allowed to ask you if you can work on evenings or weekends. Well, that seems strange. Why? Because this gets into religion and your marital status. Do you have children? They can't ask you that. It doesn't matter what religion you are. You can't talk about that. It's not their business. Working at night, working in the evenings, working in weekends can kind of determine your religion. Marital status, married, single, divorced, widowed, none of their business. Not allowed to give that information. And this is a huge one. Are you planning to have a family? I know in Japan, if you were planning to have a family or you were pregnant, they would not hire some people because they thought that they weren't loyal to the company. They would just work there for a little bit, get pregnant, and leave. Also, when I was in Japan about 10 years ago, when women actually were pregnant and had children, some companies didn't allow them to work anymore. Oh, hello? In North America, this is very, very wrong. They cannot do that to you. Another big thing is your ability to work. Do you have a work visa? Okay, they can ask you that, but they can't ask you about your citizenship or your background, your parents. They can't ask you to see a birth certificate because where you were born has nothing to do with you getting a job. They can't ask you to see citizenship papers. They can ask you for a work visa or work permit because that's the law, but they can't ask you about anything about your family. Oh, it says, why do you speak French? Why do you want to know if I speak French? This has to do with discrimination on a citizenship level. It's not your business why you speak French, unless, of course, you are applying for a job as a French English translator or a French teacher. Maybe this is an appropriate question to ask. So I highly suggest that you know, like the back of your hand, that's an expression, what things are okay to be talked about in a job interview, even on your part. Because if you start going off, oh yeah, I was born here, and you've given them too much information. So please be careful. But good luck out there. You can get this job. Just know your rights.